You know, there's something so deeply satisfying about picking up a guard with your mind and throwing him into a crippling, blinding, silencing, burning, cold, acid darkness sphere that will trap him turn after turn until he ultimately dies helpless, alone, and afraid, along with all of his friends. Hello, my fellow adventurers, and welcome welcome all, as today I want to go over a selection of spells, 10 or so, that I believe are actually ridiculously powerful, and a lot of them perhaps quite underutilized or overlooked. A while back, I did talk about something similar, but that was aimed very much at the earlier game, up to like level 3 spells, and your kind of basics, especially for those that haven't got D&D experience, like Haste being amazing, like Counterspell, or Eldritch Blast, or Misty Step, the little gems that I'm sure you're all very much in love with like I am by this point. And while there'll be a couple more staples that I really do think are worth stressing here, I think you'll also have your eyes opened and be very pleasantly surprised at just how good a few of the spells are that on paper do admittedly look kinda trash. So, without further ado, let's get to this menagerie of magic, because I adore the spells in D&D, and I adore how they've been implemented in Baldurs Gate 3, and I am just a sucker for magic doing cool magic things and looking really cool while it does the cool magic things. And there really is such endless ways to combine spell effects with both the enemies, yourself, and the environment in Baldurs Gate here that just results in some absolutely wonderful chaos. So let's begin then with number 10, where we are going to look at one of those staples, and that is Sanctuary. Yes, I know a lot of you will be like, okay, yeah, obviously Sanctuary is good. Yes, it's a great spell, but I really do want to stress it, because I think a lot of people do kind of pass over it, because simply that you can't attack or harm another creature, it goes away, and you want all your characters to be harming and attacking other creatures. That's kind of the point of combat, but the utility of Sanctuary really can't be understated. The ability to just give one of your party members essentially a free pass immunity from enemy action unless you put them somewhere they get collateraled by AoE is so valuable. An easy example, if we enter turn-based mode here, is if I give Sanctuary to my Sorcerer, and yeah, this is kind of like a interesting decision because the Sorcerer needs to be blasting, but the thing is the Sorcerer can also do stuff like Twin Spell Haste, and now 2 of your party members have double actions. But because I'm now Sanctuaried, nobody can target and attack me to break my concentration, so that haste is just going to stay. And that's a really good use of it, maintaining concentration spells without actually having any risk of them dropping. You also have the other sort of more obvious use of it, where you can put Sanctuary on a more support-focused character, where you can do stuff like summon your guys that do the attacking, that don't count as an attack, get your Guardian of Faith going. Also, yes, healing doesn't break Sanctuary, so you can just stand there untargetable, consistently healing everyone and keeping everyone alive, and just rolling out utility. It's just so clutch in so many situations, and it works brilliantly for NPCs. I won't go into any spoilers per se, but there is a lot of missions, especially in the later game, where keeping a key NPC alive is so critical, and Sanctuary is just a free pass to completing that because the enemies just don't target them anymore. And even in a situation where you fully plan to break the Sanctuary with an attack, just giving yourself or a character a round where they won't take any more damage or get hit or get stunned or get CC'd or get knocked prone is really helpful. That one turn of immunity to most things the enemy are going to do, so you guarantee you get your next turn to do the big boom that you were planning and need a little breather to get to, is excellent. It's also a good way then to force your tanky characters to be the one taking the hits, because I'm Sanctuary over here on the bridge, and, you know, I'm all injured and need some saving. I've got Sanctuary on me. Shadowheart is much tankier with much higher AC, so now the enemies kind of have to have a go at her instead of me. I can just sort of stand here and not have to worry about much as we go along. Yeah, they're sort of just moving around confused. And when you can create this kind of environment, yeah, that's definitely a spell worth consistently having available and using when the moment is right. And that's kind of the last key to leave with Sanctuary. When the moment is right, it is just a brilliant, clutch, and game-changing spell to whack on the right person. Next up then, I want to talk about one of my favorite interactions in the entire game, and the spell it revolves around is Greater Invisibility, a spell that on the surface is kinda useless, so it is just upgraded invisibility. Regular invisibility, as soon as you do an action or attack, you get uninvisibled, whereas with this, you have a chance to stay invisible, which is obviously great, but the key there is the chance. How it works, if you don't know, is when you attack with Greater Invisibility, you roll a stealth check, and you have to get 15 or higher to stay invisible. Which isn't ideal. If we look at something like my Sorcerer here, I've got +3 to stealth, so I need to roll a 12 or higher. That's quite a good chance to completely immediately become visible and essentially waste the 4th level spell slot on one advantaged attack. Yeah, but if you can get your stealth high enough, well then things change dramatically. And every time you successfully attack while invisible with Greater Invisibility, the DC to stay invisible goes up. 15, then 16, then 17, then 18 each time you get an attack off. So on Astarion here, that I have not really done anything to at all because I've not used him all game, but he does let me show you that with his +13 stealth, well, he's got an excellent chance of staying invisible. But we can go even further than that by comboing it with another spell that I want to kind of include as a double dip here, and that is Pass Without Trace. This gives everyone in your party a +10 to stealth checks. So now Astarion is over here on +23 stealth, which means that he can't physically fail the Greater Invisibility check outside of a critical fail. He can't fail on the 2nd. He can't fail on the 3rd. It's only by the 4th attack that he is now even able to become not invisible. And as a really good example, if we combine a few things, we will get Sanctuary and put it on Gale here. Then we will grab Gale and get our Greater Invisibility on Astarion. And then with these two, we will just go pick a fight. Because Gale is Sanctuaried, he can't be attacked and have his concentration on Greater Invisibility broken. And because Astarion is so stealthy, he can just keep attacking from Greater Invisibility. And everything works very, very smoothly. So, and there we have it. And now we're technically in combat, but what does it matter? I'm just going to end my turn on Gale here. He is surprised, of course, so we'll go over here and we'll do ourselves another lovely stab. Stealth is successful and we're still invisible. Okay, very cool. End the turn on Gale again, and he's just standing there, looking around, confused, because he can't attack Gale because of Sanctuary. And he can't attack Astarion because he's invisible. And then Astarion can just keep absolutely murdering him and still stay invisible. So you see what I mean. At first it seems a little bit, but with a few combinations, with the help from a wizard or a sorcerer, from a cleric, with a druid Pass Without Trace, you can create quite the party combination that turns your rogue or stealthy son of a bitch into a death-dealing unstoppable machine. Next up then is something that requires a little bit less, explanation on how to make it good, get it going, but it is a support healing spell that I think is definitely undervalued. Everyone likes healing words, your mass healing words, your cure wounds, and your preserve life if you're a life cleric, etc. But one thing that I think goes well under the radar is aid. This is a really nice double dip. Obviously you get the heal, but it's the increased your hit points maximum that is really appreciated. So where, you know, on 62, 73, 62, it's a fairly squishy party, but we bust out this aid to give everyone an extra 15 health. They've, you know, healed 15, but now have 88, 77, 77. That's looking a lot better. And just that in a vacuum is nice, right? It's worth having. It lasts until your long rest. You've got that extra tankiness. If you're going into a big boss fight, it might as well happen because it's just there. It doesn't conflict with just pure healing. It's a nice extra on top. But the real reason I want to bring this up as well is if you are anyone that enjoys using summons. So for example, Conjure Elemental, a really potent summon. You can whip out your lovely Fireboy and he can do all of his good stuff. The guards don't really enjoy it, but who cares about that? Or for example, we've pulled out our Spiritual Weapon on a Cleric, another really good summon. Or even, I don't know, your Guardian of Faith. Again, another fairly potent summon. And in Guardian of Faith's case, it's actually going to be even more potent. So this has 78 health, 102, and 26 on the weapon. If we go back then and cast ourselves the aid, it affects all summons, including undead who you normally can't heal. So now we have a 46 health Spiritual Weapon, a 122 health Elemental, but then a 98 health Guardian of Faith. And given that a Guardian of Faith can only do as much damage as it has health, this directly increases its output in a meaningful way, and is really good if you are a fan of having lots of minions running around, because it makes them massively more effective. So definitely just one to keep in your back pocket. Next up then, we're going to talk about a couple flavors of darkness. Firstly, Hunger of Hadar, that I'm sure you might be aware of, you might have had it cast against you, you might know how supremely irritating this thing's existence is. So what it does is, on the ground, you put a big old zone of darkness, and you saw this as part of the amazing, hilarious setup I had at the beginning of this video with everyone piling into it, and it's just, you can set up some stupid things in choke points with other spells. But for now, this then is quite potent. We will go into it and enter turn-based mode. So while you're in it, you're blind. So disadvantage on your attacks, and you can't fire out of it because you're blind. You need to leave it beforehand, which is, again, really constricting. And because you are also in difficult terrain, your movement speed is halved, so actually leaving the thing in any small amount of movement is really difficult. You're going to be in this a couple of turns. And then on top of that, you just take damage every turn you are in it. The cold at the start, and then the extra acid potentially at the end. This thing can just lock down, cripple, and kill huge groups of enemies. It's just really good, simply and straightforward, and it's something that should always be considered. However, if you want to be really mean as a quick little bonus and a little bit of an extra spell thrown in, Silence. This creates a little dome about the same size as Hunger, and then everyone inside of it is now, yes, silenced. So you can't cast your spells, which means you really have no options. You can't attack, you can't cast, you can't move, you're dying. It's just hell in Hadar. So that's all well and good, but we can use darkness as a concept in a little bit of a cooler way. If we, well, clear out of Hadar for now. So what that concept is with regular darkness. And why is that? Well, if you are in regular darkness, much like Hadar, you can't see, you have disadvantage on attacks, you can't fire out of the darkness, and enemies that are out of the darkness can't fire into it. It's this little bubble. And did that random civilian just walk up and stick his face into Hadar? For God's sake, and now I've committed murder! So let's whack it down here on Gale, and ta-da, here we are. So we are blinded, enemies can't shoot in, we can't shoot out, we can't even teleport out or anything like that because, you know, we can't see it, we'd have to walk to the edge, and then we can cast, and any melee combat in here is disadvantaged. So it's a real kind of mess, is darkness. It affects the enemies and you in equal measure, and just makes everything harder and more annoying. A real double-edged sword. but we can take one of those edges away. So we have blinded all of these guys with the darkness there, and that's all well and good, and then we're going to have Gale just kind of leave, and for an extra safety measure we will give him a little bit of sanctuary too, just so he keeps concentrating. Then we can go back to will grow in our cloud, and then we'll enter turn-based mode. So as I was saying, we can mitigate one of those edges, and that is with a level 2 Warlock feature that goes by Devil's Sight that you can choose as one of your perks alongside Agonizing Blast, for example. This means we can see in normal and magical darkness just fine. So in this cloud, your warlocks are essentially king. Enemies outside can't target us in. If the melee guys come in, they're disadvantaged attacking us and have to get right up to us. So we get sort of this kind of home where we are king. Everything is stacked in our favor, and we can sort of just exist in it and do damage from the center because, yeah, we can see out, so we can actually blast out. And it doesn't matter that our stealth failed either, because, again, we're in a cloud of darkness. So they are going to, of course, try their very best to stop me, but there's not really much stopping that can be done. If I end my turn and let them actually try their best to get it done, yeah, as you can see, they're very confused. They're kind of left with throwing, as you can just, you know, generically try and throw stuff in a cloud, but that's your only real option. Specifically, clicking on will, or the warlock that's in it, is a much harder thing to try and accomplish. So essentially, as long as you can survive kind of generic basic throwing, you are supremely advantaged in any given combat situation, even when you're completely solo like this. The crossbow person can't fire any shots because they can't click on me. The melee guys don't want to come into the cloud because then they'll be disadvantaged, so they just sit at the outside looking upset. And I think it is absolutely wonderful. You can really kind of play with this, and if you wanted to, you could create an entire build around being a sort of darkness solo warrior. You can either do it ranged by firing out of it, or just melee killing people in the darkness, where you are quite literally supremely advantaged. The Steel Watcher there just passed his turn because he has no idea what to do. It's so funny. So yeah, I really wanted to kind of highlight that on how you can use darkness in a way that only benefits you and only disadvantages the enemy, and when you include the rest of your team, you heal up from the random bits of thrown stuff, which is the only way anything can be stopped here. And if we really want, let's just kind of double up, since Will isn't the one concentrating on the normal darkness, and now we're really kind of cooking. It's a lovely bit of darkness soup. I don't know what he thinks he's achieving by jumping over there, but it's not a lot. And you just, I mean, look, I realize I'm laboring the point, but when this many enemies just cannot figure out how to stop and kill your one warlock that is sat here, I mean, what else do you need to know or see to be convinced of this general darkness setup? Lastly then, I want to talk about Firewall, or more specifically Wall of Fire. This one might be a bit more of an obvious pick, you might have used it yourself, but it really cannot be stressed how good it is in the right situation. In somewhere where you have a choke point and enemies are forced to run through the firewall or they just can't get to you, it absolutely solos fights and cannot be overstated. But there is more ways to use it. For example, as you've been seeing, layering it with Hunger of Hadar or other zone-wide effects to force people to stay in it for as long as possible and really compound the damage is definitely good. But the thing is, the actual range on this is huge. But if you combined it with a Sorcerer who can do a distant spell, then you can actually get such a colossal firewall, and the amount of damage potential on that is insane. So we have it now, they're all walking towards us, trying their best, and 3 of them are already on half health. Even the Steel Watcher, that's normally quite tanky about it, is still definitively struggling. So this just creates this situation where all of these guys here essentially are just going to die before they can even join the fight. and that is absolutely wonderful. And if we do combine that with general sorceryness, so we can dance around it, play with it, so on and so forth, you do end up in a really good situation. So let's actually see how they try and conquer this single obstacle. He's going to run straight towards it, and almost. So how about Selena here? Yep. Just kind of charging on through it. They'll take the damage when they arrive, take the damage when they end their turn. And when you upcast it especially, the actual raw damage this thing does deal is crazy. It also deals damage within 3 meters of the wall itself. They don't actually have to stand in it, so it's got a much larger range than it actually looks like it has. It really is a huge battlefield controller, and one that I cannot recommend enough for that precious concentration slot if you have someone that can keep it up, someone with Warcaster, and your rest of your party can play around at range and actually use it to the best of their abilities. So, we might end up getting ruined here. And there goes the wall of fire, which is a shame. But what I was going to show you is something like telekinesis as an extra little bonus spell here. You know this. You know it's fun to just grab people and just fling them off a cliff and one-shot them and such. But it does provide amazing utility. Imagine the wall of fire was still there. We just grab the person and throw them back in the wall of fire. Back in the darkness. Back in the hadar. Back in the silence. And we can just repeatedly do that every single turn. Yes, this is concentration, so it needs to be someone else who isn't doing the wall of fire, but in concert with the rest of your team, as you saw, you can create this sort of ultra-layered death zone that is nigh impossible to get out of. So, yeah, really just wanted to throw in wall of fire there, as I think it does get overshadowed by the more lightning-y, higher-level evocations, which definitely have more raw damage, but the utility and battlefield control, especially comboed with other spells, cannot be overstated. Alright then, ladies and gentlemen, that is my little bit of a rundown of a handful of spells, how to use them in an effective way, and why they're definitely worth considering, and they might be a lot more than they initially appear to be. So, like if you've enjoyed this, let me know if you'd like some more spell collections. I kind of want to do one for level 6 spells in the future, and subscribe for more. Consider supporting the future of this channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.